Welcome to the Secure Your Retirement podcast. I'm Mers Tariq alongside Raiden Stansel. Thank you for joining us today.
We have a great podcast in store for you today. Have you ever had the worry that you're going to be retired without asking? Meaning you all of a sudden get this package and you're told that I'm now retired and it's 5 years too early. In this show, Merce and I walk through step by step of a real situation when somebody finds out that they're retired and they were not planning for it. We know you'll enjoy this show. Well, we're so excited to have you here today for our Retirement in Action. And what we do here, Merce and I come on Wednesdays, and our goal is to be able to share an idea, something that somebody's having to deal with within the real life of planning for or living in retirement. And today certainly is no exception. I do want to tell you, though, we've had quite a few folks who have wanted to give us feedback or give us other questions that they might have that they would want us to take on and explain in an episode. So we have set up a texting hotline, if you want to call it that, a way for you to be able to reach out to us and be able to send us a text. We feel that that's easier. We can actually text you back as well. But if you would like to text us any questions, comments, or any topics you would like to cover, make note of this number. It is area code 984-207-1753. Again, that's 984-207-1753. So this is not a phone line that we can have a conversation, but we can text back and forth, and that'll help us to be able to make sure that we give good content. But today, we're going to talk about something that we've had quite a bit of experience with all throughout our careers, but in particularly as we have moved into this new idea of Corona and things that have gone on with that. But that is, you just found out that you're retired. You didn't know that it was going to happen, but you got a call, you've got an offer, and now you've got a severance package potentially, but you didn't quite make it to where you thought you were going to make it. And so now you've got some questions. So Merce and I are going to run through some different aspects of how we would deal with this, how we've literally done this within the last month, multiple times, where we've walked people through these categories. So first of all, Merce, can you just kind of walk us through kind of what would be the first step? We get somebody in and they go, "Hey guys, just found out I'm retired. What do I do?"
Yeah. I think it's, unfortunately, early retirement, unplanned retirement, layoffs, it's just a part of what happens these days, COVID or not. We've seen it over the years. We've seen it a few times this year, and it's something that we are fortunately able to work through. A big part of it is understanding the whole situation that we're walking into. So knowing everything about the financial situation, knowing how you live your life as far as from an expense perspective, and then knowing your possible options out there, whether it's the ability to maybe consult after your retirement, or maybe the ability to find another job, or to transition into a part-time job, or maybe a dream scenario. So it's really, for Raiden and I, it's really about having an open conversation with that person who had to go through this whole life event, and coming up with the game plan. And it's going to be very fluid, because whether or not the retirement comes with a severance gives us some time to think about how we want to play it out, and kind of go through the motions of trying to find another job or trying to find consulting work or whatever it is. So it's a very fluid thing that we're willing to work through, as long as it takes.
Yeah. So one of the advantages that we have is that we've seen a lot of different cases where we've worked with this, but we've also, we have software that is extremely easy for us to run those what ifs that Merce just walked through. And so I kind of want to go back and recap them. And really, this is the thing that happens every time we have this conversation. So let me paint a little bit of a story. We have a 60-year-old lady who has just, a client of ours, she has just come to us and said, "I just found out that they are making some changes within the corporation, and they are offering me a early retirement. And here's kind of the story. I have currently a 1-year severance package. They are giving me this, and I can take it as a lump sum, or I can split it over a couple of years." And we'll talk a little bit about why we would probably take the split it over a couple years part, but they've given her this offer. So she has some time, and when it comes to money, she's got some savings. She has 401k. She has some savings in the bank, but she's really trying to look at this and go, what does this really mean for me? And so here are some of the things that we're going to run through in those what ifs. So we're going to run through a what if she is no longer going to work. So she says, I don't know what I might not be able to do. So what if I am fully retired? But she says, I do have and I have had people ask me to consult on what it is my expertise is. And so I know I've got some things out there. I've had some people ask me about it. I've got some interest in that, but I have no real idea as to what that's going to mean. The other one is I get a new job. Maybe I have a new opportunity out there that comes my way and I want to take it, but I've not gotten anything yet. I just found out about this. The other one is, and this one's kind of interesting, Merce, could you talk about this? And this is a different person, but this happened. And I think it's important to understand what this person did with their early layoff.
Yeah. So we had a client that basically was given a time at which they were going to be laid off, and they had I believe, a short severance package. So he took some time to kind of figure out what it is he wanted to do, and he made the point that being at the age he was, in the career path that he was in, he really didn't see any possibility of getting rehired. He basically said all the younger guys are getting hired for way less money than he was making. So he kind of kicked the notion of continuing his current career pathway out completely. And he said, well, I've always loved the idea. I've been very good in the nautical world, boating, fishing, everything like that. So I've always loved the idea of just kind of working in um, pretty much like a tackle store, bait and tackle store at an ocean or whatever. And so he kind of went down that pathway. He said, I understand that I'm going to take a massive pay cut from what I was currently earning, but I'm going to do something that's fun. I'm going to do something that I enjoy doing, and I can see myself doing it for quite a few years. And it'll keep me busy. It'll keep me active, keep my mind working. And so I'm going to go down that path. And maybe if I, land something that's $12 to $15 an hour, even though it's going to hurt for a little bit, I'll be doing something I enjoy. So he went down that pathway, and he actually ended up getting a gig with somewhat of more of like a call center, to where he's actually taking calls for people that own equipment, and he's just really helping out and troubleshooting that equipment. And so he loves doing that. He's a very analytical type of person, so it works really well for him. So a long story just to tell you, sometimes that when you have that life event where uh, you get that retirement shock, that early layoff package or whatever it is, you can either treat it as, well, what am I going to do next? Or you can treat it as, this is quite the opportunity for me. And so he went in that route, to where I've paid the bills. I've done the things that I have to do for 30, 40, 50 years. Now let me do something for myself.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about this idea of the severance and the options that are on the severance, because we see this quite a bit, where that a company will say, hey, we've got a 1-year severance, and they don't typically pay you out, like a normal paycheck every week or 2 weeks or whatever it might be. They say, hey, here's the lump sum of what it is that you've got. And if it's a year or however much it is, if it's a year, they'll say, hey, we'll give you this lump sum. And some companies very nicely will offer to say, you can take this as a lump sum right now, or you can take a part of it this year and then a part of it next year. Now, if you got that package, and here we sit now late in the year, and you got that package right now, you might take just a little bit of it this year and take the bulk of it next year. Well, why would you do that? Why would you want to spread that over a couple years? Well, number one is because of taxes. So if I've already made a good chunk of my income for this year, I wouldn't want to throw all another year on this year. I would rather take a little bit of it this year and then throw the rest of it into next year to spread the tax burden. Because if I take all of it right now, I'm going to have a much bigger tax bill, because my income is going to look really big this year. It's going to be really big this year. And so it's much better to separate that and split it over a couple years. Now, we obviously, like I told you, we actually use software to be able to do an analysis of this. So we're able to throw it into the software. We're able to put it back and forth and run those scenarios. Um, so just keep that in mind. If you get a severance package, you're going to want to look at what's the best place to take it this year, maybe over a couple of years if they will allow it. That's going to be a huge option. So, Merce, can you kind of walk us through a little bit more of where this particular person, this 60-year-old executive client of ours, when they came in, kind of maybe a little bit of the makeup of what they got?
Yeah. So basically, she's done a good job of saving. So she's worked basically all of her life. She's always contributed to that 401k. So when she came to us, basically her 401k had amassed to about 1.5 million. So that's a bit quite a large number, and it's helped in the sense of it made her it eased her mind knowing that she's done a lot of the work, and now we really just have to kind of go through the options. So she's got some money there. Also, outside of the 401k, she's got some company stock and some other investments that total to around 450,000. So you add those two together, she's got about 2 million in working capital for cash and everything investments. Now, the other big piece of this is her spending. So, how much is she going to have to live off of with at this point? Once that severance runs out, there's no money coming in the door. So, we have to live off of those assets if we don't have another plan. So, her spending is a huge deal, and we really want to dive into that. But her total number is about $8,000 a month. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But she's spending right now $8,000 a month. And
I just want to say one thing on that just
Mhm.
before we go off of that. So one of the things that Merce and I ask a question when we ask about that spending, sometimes people think, oh, I make $150,000, $200,000 a year. And so they look at that as that's the income that they base everything off of. When we ask what a person is spending, it's net. The easiest way to think about that is, what do I bring home every month? And how much of that do I spend? So that kind of gets rid of the tax question, that gets rid of what I'm putting in my 401k. So in this situation with this particular client, what she did is she said, here's all the money I spend on a monthly basis. So she knew what she had coming in. She knew what she was spending and what she was saving. So she was actually spending, and that could have been a variety of different things: travel, houses, all those kind of things. Spending 8,000. That's a net dollar. So it's just an important number for you to think through if you're ever having this conversation. Sorry, go ahead, Merce.
Yeah, and on top of that, made me think of another point. When we talk about spending, we don't need to know where every single dollar is going. We kind of break it down into a couple of different things. Your essential income needs and what that bulk number is, and then your wants, what that bulk number is. But a really important one, and is if there's a fixed expense that's going away at a certain point in time, we need to know that. So in this situation, she doesn't have a mortgage, but if you're carrying a mortgage and it's going to end in the next 3, 4, 5 years, we want to make sure we know about that. So, for two reasons, we inflate our expenses, but there's no reason to inflate a mortgage. It's a fixed expense. So, we won't inflate, which is usually a significant piece of your expenses. Um, so, I just wanted to point that out as well. So, when you're thinking about that, always try to break it down into some categories that'll help us out tremendously. So now we kind of want to talk about her options when it comes to consulting, and really, what she thinks she could possibly do as far as generating income and for how long she can do it. So when we're talking to her, she basically said, I think there's a good option for consulting out there. I've got some good contacts. And in my field, it seems to work out for other people that have been laid off over the years. So I'm going to give it a shot. And she said she thinks that she could probably generate somewhere in the realm of $100,000 a year, and she can do that for a few years. So that's something that we're also going to put into the scenario. Now, very likely, we're not going to run it at $100,000 a year. We may dumb that down a little bit. When I say dumb it down, just reduce it to be conservative. We like to be conservative. We're not going to shoot for the stars, and if you don't get that, then that can be troublesome. So we will probably cut that down by 75 to 50%.
All right. And then we got a whole nother topic that we have to walk through, and this is a big one. And all these what ifs. Remember, she's 60. And so the question is, when she knows I could start taking Social Security in a couple years at 62. But that's a big question that people have is, well, what's the best thing to do? Should I just live on my own money maybe until I make it to full retirement, which for her is going to be, something along the lines of 66 and a half. But for this scenario, we're trying to figure out what if she doesn't get a job? What if she does work very part-time? And the beauty of what we are able to do with software and what a person can do is look at that and say, what's the true value of taking it early or waiting? I will tell you, if you look at the numbers from one perspective and you just say, which way am I going to get the most money from Social Security if I live to age, say, 92, 93? It's going to always say, wait to 70. But that's not the correct question. We don't believe. We think when I look at age 90, 95, which way do I have the most of my money left? Or do I have the same money left? What is my risk in this scenario? And I think that you will be very surprised at the answer. I think that there are situations that call for taking the Social Security early. There's situations that say you should wait, but it's not always the same. It is not going to be that. We have to look at it individually. Now, another big concern that she had was health insurance, because now she's retired at 60 in all essence. If she consults or works part-time or whatever, she's got to cover her health insurance until she's 65 and can get on Medicare at a much higher rate. And what she's finding is that health insurance is probably going to cost her over $1,000 a month. And so she knows that's a big expense. I do want to come back though to one thing that we would look at, and on the spending of 8,000, she was in this scenario supporting the expenses of a second home. She has another home, and so it's got some HOA, it's got electric, it's got all those kind of things. So what we know is, if we have to, and she can't get the consulting and she can't get those other sources of income, if we had to, she knows that she could sell that. That's going to pick her up a little bit more equity. It's going to reduce her expenses and get her expenses down. So we can run all of those scenarios within this plan. Now, here's I think the big takeaway. Obviously, when she calls us and talks to us, or anybody comes to a financial advisor or to their retirement planner and they say, oh my goodness, I just found out I got a package. There's a lot going on in your mind. I just got this package. Can I do it? Am I going to be in trouble? And I think, Merce, what do you see when we walk somebody through this? What do you see as far as their disposition change?
Oh, I think it changes tremendously. You get that notice that you're going to be laid off, and you don't immediately go to, I'm going to be okay, because the first thing you're thinking is, well, I've been doing this for so long. How could they possibly do this to me?